And go.
All right, we're live. Welcome to the third panel of the Digital Marketing Workshop, Digital Lead Gen. I'm Marisa Salici, the host of Digital Live. Here with me is Bud Gibson, the director for the Center for Digital Engagement. Bud, can you tell us a little bit about who you have with us today and what you'll be discussing?
Well, I think thank you, Marisa. I think this is a really exciting panel we're going to have. We have, and I'll introduce them in a second when we bring them on screen, but it's a continuation of what we've been talking about the past 2 days, which is really, okay, I'm a business and I suddenly am going digital. Okay, and maybe I was gradually going digital before, but now I'm suddenly going digital. And how do I adapt? And lead gen, of course, is really important. It's a big step in sales. And so we talked a little bit about digital infrastructure yesterday that you could take advantage of. The day before we talked about also was different digital infrastructure from a different perspective. Today we're going to talk about things that lead to sales and how you help out. So I'm going to hop on over to the panel right now. Okay, so here we are all live in the panel. And to my immediate right is Amulya Parmar, co-founder and CEO of LeaseMagnets, and we'll ask him in just a second to please tell us what that's all about. Nicol Pasuit, co-founder and CEO of TechStak. Very interesting business model there, and look forward to giving Nicol a chance to talk about that. And then Sheena Monnin, who is with PassiveBolt. And if you look across the three of them, Amulya is, he's sort of a technology platform. Nicol is a marketplace. And then Sheena's business is actually selling physical things to both distributors and real customers. So why don't I ask each of you to sort of introduce yourselves? And Amulya, since you're directly to my left, I'll ask you to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bud. So again, thank you for the introduction. I co-founded a company called LeaseMagnets, which is basically a B2B SaaS prop tech tool that helps increase conversion rates on apartment websites so that more interested web visitors turn into leads or prospects, and the more of those prospects turn into leases. Now, if you think about it, the way we perceive it, the real estate market is going more and more online, and what's happening to malls is now happening to real estate. And if you think about that from that perspective, that means purchasing real estate becomes probably the largest e-commerce purchase that you make every single year. And so that's from our perspective. So we apply conversion rate optimization and better lead gen practices for these apartment websites.
That's great. And you mentioned something called SaaS, okay? Now, is that like being sassy, or what is SaaS, Amulya?
No. It's a little bit more like software as a service. So basically you can build a product, and what's cool is, so SaaS is cool for multiple reasons. One, it's usually higher margins. Two, you're solving a specific problem for the customer, and you're delivering it as delivering the software package to the customer that they usually pay a monthly fee for. Lots of big companies, some of the biggest companies now in the world today, Salesforce, are some of these examples of SaaS businesses.
Okay, great. And we'll be getting more into that as we go forward. And so, Nicol, tell us a little bit about TechStak.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bud. And thank you, Marisa. This is great to be on the panel today. So TechStak actually does two different things. And techstack.com, we built as an IT and cybersecurity tech-oriented marketplace that matches small and medium-sized businesses to tech providers. So if you're kind of think of it as the Angie's List of tech and IT for small companies, because small companies struggle with where to go and who to use for their IT, cybersecurity, their website design and development. So we're essentially a matchmaker. Now, with that, during COVID, we realized, which was a great discovery for us, a great opportunity, that our tech providers, our IT and cybersecurity providers specifically, needed help with marketing. So we found the opportunity there and launched TechStak marketing services for our tech and IT providers. So we do marketing services, provide content strategy, lead generation, so all sorts of marketing services to be able to help promote them. And really, the tech and IT providers, they're our product. So we want to make sure that they are the best that they can be and that they shine and that they can attract the right small businesses.
So you're not only promoting TechStak, you're actually helping out the providers on TechStak to promote themselves.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, yeah, well, that's an interesting evolution. I should mention that I've worked with all of these companies in our digital summer clinic, and in some cases, I've watched them evolve over years. And so, Sheena, let's hear from you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to meet you, Amulya and Bud and Marisa and Nicole. Super happy to be here. PassiveBolt provides a white label smart lock to MDUs, home automation companies, home security companies regionally and nationally. So essentially, our product will work with any single cylinder deadbolt, and it takes your deadbolt and turns it into an enhanced security smart lock product. There is a SaaS element to this as well, but we are also a hardware company. So we have both of those things happening. Now, PassiveBolt is our B2B branch of the company. We also have a B2C side of things, and that's our beachhead product called Shepherd Lock. So essentially, if you think about PassiveBolt, we're providing the hardware that other companies, if they want to, can put their label on and can sell in bulk to their customers. We're also providing Shepherd Lock, which is the same technology, same product, but underneath the Shepherd brand. And we are working on partnerships to distribute those in Amazon, Home Depot, as well as direct from our website. And you may be thinking, well, smart locks, those have been around for a while. What makes yours special? And ours offers a few features and benefits that you can't find anywhere else. For one thing, we're a touch technology smart lock. So you walk up, touch the lock, it recognizes and walk into your home, your place of business, wherever the lock is. It also offers enhanced security features that can't be found anywhere else. So it's been really fun, really challenging to figure out ways to market this product and to really speak the consumer language, both on the B2B side of things for our partners, as well as your consumer that you may find in Amazon, Home Depot, et cetera.
Okay, well, great. And I should warn you, Sheena, that we have Gabby Giannuzzi Paul in the comments already asking questions. For those who are unaware, Gabby works for us at the Center for Digital Engagement, but she's also continuing on in her summer internship with PassiveBolt. So she has a little bit of an inside perspective.
She does. She is so awesome.
Yeah. And so let's kind of come back and so we've kind of introduced this idea of digital lead gen, and we're not sure what that is. I'm going to ask you what that is from the point of view of each of you, and I'm going to point out that we have Amulya, who is B2B, but then also helping those B2B people, business to business people, reach out to consumers. His product is actually built around generating leads from consumers. And Nicol, I think, is a B2B person selling to businesses, or in some sense selling. We'll talk about how your business model works in a minute, Nicol. How do you make money doing this? But then also helping those providers market their services. And then Sheena is kind of got feet in both worlds, okay, in the B2B, business to business, and business to consumer. And so let me ask you then, what do you think is digital lead gen? And I'm going to follow that up with exactly how you define a lead, okay? But what is digital lead gen? And just who'd like to go first? Well, okay, so that the audience is at home is not left in too much suspense. Nicol, why don't I throw that to you first?
Sure. So digital lead gen, to me, that really covers such a broad scope. So when I think about digital lead gen, especially now with so many companies having to move to being online, as you kind of prefaced our panel today, and they had to do that very quickly. So digital lead gen is how can you be found on online? What does your digital footprint look like? So how are you going to generate leads online and create online or demand using online methods and tactics? So digital lead gen can include things like social media. How are you going to get leads from social media? How are you going to get leads from your email marketing campaigns? How do you get leads from your website? So those are all digital marketing based methods for lead generation and lead nurturing, really. So those are some of the tactics that we are actually using now. We use a lot of content for lead generation and creating lead magnets. And when I think about a lead magnet, what a good lead magnet is, and defining that, are you answering the questions that your audience is asking? So, that's how you come up with a good lead magnet, or a sticky lead magnet, if you will. So, lead generation, again, we're using email marketing. We go through a whole nurturing process there. We use social media, LinkedIn, LinkedIn profiles, and optimizing LinkedIn profiles. We also use LinkedIn outreach, and very strategically and intentionally combine that with our content marketing and what we post, what we're messaging. So all of those things tie together, and digital lead generation is kind of a spider web.
Well, so let's I think, Nicol, this is a great moment to kind of clarify what we mean by lead generation. So if you think about sales, and your providers are selling their services to other businesses that need help with their tech infrastructure and cybersecurity. So this is not an e-commerce sale where somebody goes and they click on and then they click the buy button and they buy. There's typically some follow-up and potentially negotiation, and then the lead gets closed, often through a personal interaction. Does that kind of fit with your understanding of lead gen?
Yeah. So when I think about lead generation in the kind of process or workflow from start to finish, you've got to attract the right leads of people who are interested in what your services are or what you're offering. And then when I think about the upfront part of lead gen, how are you qualifying them as a marketing qualified lead, where they're at the top of your funnel, the first part of their buyer journey, and then moving them through that buyer journey in your sales funnel to qualify them and get them to be that sales qualified lead, and then closing the deal. That's a whole process, right? That's a whole lead generation and lead nurturing process, all the way to closing the sale.
Okay, so yes, and so I think that's a very good point. This idea of qualifying. Okay, so and there's this traditional notion of the sales funnel where you start out with, oh my God, I need to do something. So in your case, it may be a small business, and I need to set up my tech infrastructure. How do I even begin? Okay, so that we'll call that the awareness phase. Then they move into a research phase where they start to understand their problem more, and then they start to think, well, what are solutions? And then you come to a comparison of alternatives. By the time you get down to the end of that, I've identified a few potentials, and then ultimately you might pull the trigger. And so qualified means figuring out where those people are in that funnel, and then giving them the information that can help them move forward, and hopefully not dropping the ones who have high potential to actually become your customers. I think this is where people can have a tendency to really sort of lose out. And so Amulya, you are, and I'm going to come to you, Sheena, because you're my hybrid person. So Amulya, now you have LeaseMagnets, okay, and you specifically brought up lead gen. So tell us a little bit about how lead gen works in the world of leasing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nicol, I was, quick thing, where do you think LeaseMagnets comes from? We turned the word lead to LeaseMagnet. So, but that said, the one thing I would want to just break down and just expand on just a little bit more, but is you talked about the sales funnel. That sales funnel, basically in any kind of services, product, any kind of website, that funnel remains consistent. So, Bud talked about awareness, research, desire, and action. Basically, for our business or in leasing business, you substitute a few parts of that funnel. So it's awareness, research, booking a tour or taking a tour, and leasing, right? And so you want to maintain, like Bud said, you want to make sure people at the top of the funnel continue down, as many people continue down each part of the funnel as possible. So hopefully you have more people ending up at that leasing action. Now, the problem is often leads can get lost anywhere, right? And so whether it can, awareness, so what is awareness? Typically awareness is, it's traffic to your website. Ultimately, you find a main point of your conversion. For us, it's traffic to your website. But where traffic comes from as it comes to your website, it could be from, reviews, it could be from referrals. There's lots of different sources where this traffic could come from. Okay, now the person is on your website. Now, how do you capture their interest? How do you provide the right information at the right time? So those are the pictures, those are pricing, those are floor plans. And then once you're researching the apartment, you want to make sure that you're somehow capturing the lead information. And this isn't just for leasing, right? This is for, whether you're doing B2B sales, whether you're doing B2C, a product you're offering someone a free trial, you want to capture the lead information, or even a lead magnet, as Nicol talked about. You want to capture their lead information. For us, it's booking a tour or claiming a special discount, and then getting them to lease, right? So once there are points of time where that lease conversion is higher. So let's say you're in person, that lease conversion is higher. So you want to find points of contact where you can basically increase conversion. So often that's booking a tour, and then that tour turns into a lease. But that's the basics. I can talk a little bit more about lead nurturing or anything else that you have in mind.
Well, let me come back to Sheena. One thing that I would like to get with you, but we're going to go to Sheena first, is so you have this kind of technical innovation that you've been working on to help this process, Amulya, with your virtual tours. And so one thing I'd like to come back to you on is, how specifically does that fit into the lead nurturing process? But I want to get to Sheena, because Sheena has this interesting case of she's got consumers and she's got B2B. So tell us about lead gen in these two contexts, Sheena.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually thinking earlier with something that Nicol said, with COVID and everything sort of changing in a very big way, we are being forced to think outside the box and to think more digitally. And so it's been a really interesting journey. And it brought to mind something that is upcoming for us, because as PassiveBolt B2B, Shepherd Lock B2C, we have relied on trade shows. We have relied on being there in person, making those in-person connections, whether it be with rental companies, home security companies, or raising awareness in the consumer field as well. And as those have been postponed and now taken digitally, we're very curious to see how that's going to change, because we are involved in these digital conferences. We have one coming up next week, and then we have CES, the big one, coming up in January. And I'll be very curious to be able to see how much the landscape has changed. But I do still think, and I wanted to make this point, as we're preparing for some of these online conferences, trade shows, et cetera, we are seeing some very cleverly worded and very creative ways that other companies are approaching us in terms of selling their services. And so I think there's a lot of room there for connections to be made, even digitally, even though it may not be as ideal as in person. But if you are a small business and you are kind of reticent as far as investing in some of these online trade shows and conferences, I can say from having received several emails and even some cold calls as well in regard to those, it does still work and it can be quite valuable. So I wanted to throw that out there. But as far as lead generation, the B2B side of things for us is very, very specific. And we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary of our company being founded. So we've been at this for a couple of years now. And one of the things that we've noticed is while we may tweak some of our tactics, our overall strategy, our overall approach, and our overall targets remain the same. So those haven't really changed too much. We've just tweaked some of our tactics and some of the sub parts of our strategies, if you will. But from the B2C side of things, we've really been playing around with how do we raise awareness in a landscape that already has products out there, products that have been out there for quite a while. And that can be a challenge. But some of the things that we have noticed is with some of our inbound lead generation, we didn't really touch on this, but there's a difference between how you approach outbound leads and inbound leads. The energy is very different there. The strategies are very different.
So just to be really clear, Sheena, an inbound lead is where the person approaches you, and an outbound lead is where you've initiated contact. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, very generally speaking, outbound, your energy is out, you are advertising, you are cold calling, you are pursuing. Inbound, you have presented your information, you presented your company, you have great content, you have great SEO strategies that you've implemented, and people then come to you. Yeah. So
Okay.
there's the difference there. And you need to be strong, I think, on both, and you need to have good strategies there. But thinking in terms of going direct to the consumer, my background is actually in psychology, and I think there's a really strong tie there between the way you market your company, the way you find leads, and also maintaining a healthy, strong psychology between yourself and the other business, yourself and the consumer. So I think that's important to touch on as well. But some of the tactics that we've used very well to generate leads have been through Facebook advertising, through email marketing, through definitely increasing the amount of SEO content that we have on our website and making sure that we have a robust blog page, things like that, so that people, when they put in those search queries and those long tail search phrases, that they can find us. So those are some of the tactics that we've used to get Shepherd out there in front of the masses, if you will.
Okay, so Sheena, I like that, and I just want to kind of sum up across both you and Nicol, actually, because Nicol, you're also using a content strategy, are you not, to nurture leads on through TechStak?
Oh, yes, we absolutely are. We use a heavy content strategy. And for example, because we have two different pieces of our company, we use my LinkedIn as a, just as an example, and all of the content on my LinkedIn and the messaging, the copy, the calls to action, all of that is geared towards TechStak.com, the matching services, and helping small businesses find their IT and tech providers and cybersecurity providers. We actually then use our salesperson. Her LinkedIn and all of her content is very specific and very intentional around our TechStak marketing services for the IT and tech providers. So we do that kind of divide and conquer. So, again, as a strategy, so using my profile and my outreach towards these small to medium-sized businesses, and then hers is used for attracting all of the IT and tech providers. So we're very specific and very targeted with that content, which means is something that we really haven't talked about, is honing in on your persona or your buyer or your ideal customer profile. And again, what I hear all of us saying is we take a very intentional approach, and nothing is random.
Okay, well, no, that's great. And we are, so let me take a moment. We're actually getting several questions here. We've had some questions around content. It's about 5 minutes before we get to questions from the audience. So we're going to explore those, and we're going to let the audience have some input in terms of what their questions are. So audience members, if you have additional questions here, please ask them. And we've got all sorts of questions about lead gen coming in. And another thing I want to note, we've mentioned this in the comments, we have had a couple of streaming hiccups as we've gone along, but those have resolved. And we seem to be on a good pace here. So thank you for sticking with us. And Amulya, I promised you I would come back to you. And so what's interesting to me is you're a computer. Okay, so I should kind of point out, you're actually still an undergrad at U of M. You started this business. You're a computer science and business school student, so you're kind of straddling two areas there. And one thing that interested me in what you did was you developed a tech solution, or at least you started with a tech solution. I think you've built out from there. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So LeaseMagnets, simply put, is basically the best virtual tour on the apartment. It's a personalized way to give in-person like tour experiences to the front of every apartment website. We've started in Ann Arbor with a product called Zaragon. Have you heard of the Zaragon apartments? We started there. We went across the United States with the product. So went from Chicago. We launched this new virtual tour product. That was like a piece of COVID, I think, our catalyst. That really helped us grow from non-linearly to South Carolina, Texas, California, and we basically swung back and got Big Village as a client. So that is kind of, you know, some of the progress. The simple way of explaining, you know, what B2B and the value of B2C, like what a B2B2C product is. For us, building this virtual tour and creating the value for the, you know, the prospect, the visitor on the website was paramount, because once we know that we are generating value for the end customer, then we can say, okay, here, you know, this X business, let's make sure you can try to generate some value. We know we can generate value for you. You can buy this product. But if we don't generate the value for the B2C customer first and figure out how to optimize that, then it's harder to sell to that B2B customer for us.
Well, I think this is actually a really important point, and I think you and Nicol are facing it. Is your kind of, how do you sell the business on your solution, your lead gen solution? Well, it's because it works for end consumers. And in your case, Amulya, you know, you had, I don't want to say the good fortune, but you kind of hit at a point where suddenly people did not want to physically go to apartment spaces, and so they were looking for alternatives, and there you are. Okay, because you started this well before COVID, then COVID came in and kind of got you going. And so there you are, and you're able to make the case, hey, look, people don't want to come into you, but we can make it possible for them to have a look-see without that. And then in your case, Nicol, I think how this is played out is you have actually taken you've realized that one of the things you had to do was help your service providers speak to customer needs and learn how to address customers. And then you kind of bolstered that effort. Am I correct in understanding that?
Oh, Bud, you nailed it. Right? I mean, spot on, because our IT and tech providers, they come to us and they're really challenged, in the whole, you know, lockdown, shutdown, moving to digital really wreaked havoc on their businesses. And I just said the other day, I was talking with somebody and I said, wow, if I had $1 for every time I hear, hey, we used to rely on word of mouth and trade shows and networking events and referrals. But those things are drying up for us, and they're scared and they're worried and they're trying to figure this out of, how do I go keep my business thriving when I never did marketing? I never did digital marketing. I never had an online footprint. I don't know how to talk to my customer in that manner. I don't have content. So that's where we realized, wow, there's a big gap there. And what we're good at is we understand both sides of the story, the small business, and then we understand the tech providers as well. And I love what Amulya said in terms of value. It's all about the value, and the sale is really taking place in your customer's mind, and they need to see that you're unique and that you're delivering value to them. You're solving their problem.
And so great. And so we're going to go into, we're at the 12:30 mark. I'm going to ask Sheena one more question, and then we're going to go into questions from the audience. But so Sheena, you work both the B2C side and the B2B side. So you're selling to distributors and other people who are ultimately distributing to end users. But then you also have a business directly to end users. So have you been able to kind of use those to reinforce each other?
That's a really interesting question. And I'd say on a local and regional scale, yes, we have been able to see some connection between the two, especially thinking to some of the trade shows that we've been to, where we were speaking to people we thought may be interested in Shepherd because they're a consumer, but come to find out they actually own an entire string of Airbnb properties, or they run an entire MDU, multi-dwelling unit facility, and come to find out they were so much more than what I was pitching to them in the moment. I was pitching more Shepherd, and they were actually ended up being more locally or regionally for PassiveBolt, or more on the B2B side of things. And so again, same technology, same product, very different channels and different ways that it's being used and distributed. So yeah, there has been, I would say, on a smaller scale, some crossover there for sure.
Okay, well, great. And I'd like to point out, people often talk about a big difference between B2B and B2C, and there are differences, so I don't want to say there aren't. B2B tends to be a more complex sale with multiple decision makers, but you are always dealing with human decision makers. And so the things you use to influence somebody in a B2B context may be very similar to what you're using in a B2C context. And if they kind of like the product, okay, it appeals to them, they see it immediately, then that is going to, that's a B2C appeal that's going to work in the B2B context. So I actually, we'll start off here. We have many questions. And we'll start off here, and so let me hop over into my question asking mode here, and I'm going to pop up a question from Nicol Raymond, friend of the Digital Summer Clinic. She was a Digital Summer Clinic student, I think our second or third, 2017, so it was our third year of doing it. She's now out in Colorado, joining us by Facebook, works for a B2B lead gen company in the building space. And so we talked about content a little bit earlier, and how Nicol, you were using a content strategy, and then also Sheena, you were too, and Amulya, I think you are also, because I've kind of skipped by that part of you, but I know we had somebody working with you on that. And so she asked, Nicol, what is your strategy when a piece of content doesn't perform the way you thought it would? Do you let it die, or do you continue trying to optimize it? Okay, so I'm looking out there, I've put something out, it's not quite working the way I hoped it would. What do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the rule of thumbs that we like to try to abide by is that we stick with something and we try it for at least 3 to 6 months, and we're looking at that. Is it working? Is it not working? And what could potentially be some of the other, like, the reasons why it's not working. So when we look at something that is not working, what do we need to change about that? And can you do any A/B testing? So maybe you need to tweak the headline. Maybe you need to, tweak the subject line or tweak something else related to that piece of content. And, a piece of content that's kind of a pretty broad, right? Because it could be a blog, it could be, an actual downloadable piece of content, something like that. So we look at that. And then the other thing I'll go back to is your persona. What questions are they asking? And did you build that or put together that piece of content in the right manner? Is it the right format? So there's just so many things to really look at, and to question of why something may not be working. But did you, are you answering your buyer's question? And if you're not, maybe that's the first thing you take a look at, right? In terms of it not working, or is it in the wrong format, the wrong medium? Is that something that they don't like to interact with infographics? They don't like to read a 3,000 word blog. So those are some of the things that you need to look at to adjust.
Can I add something to that as well?
Sure,
real quick?
sure.
That's awesome. It's so good. And when you said A/B testing, it made my brain go, oh wait, there's another element to this as well. When it comes to, especially for younger businesses that are like less than 5 years old, I think that you're always learning and you're always understanding what Nicole said. What does your customer, your partner, the consumer want? And I know for us, for me, especially when I was just starting out with this company, I was really learning what do I measure against? There's a lot of really established companies out there. What should be my expectation when I'm putting out ad content, when I'm creating our blog structures, when I am running through these A/B test scenarios? Google offers some support with that, as well as obviously any Facebook or online social ads as well. But I think also when you're thinking of that specific question, what is your baseline metric that you're working from? And maybe it could be that you're thinking in terms of where you could be 6 months from now versus where you might be now. And it could be that you're trying to grow and jump up too quickly. And I know for us, when it comes to the content that we're putting out there, of course, we get better and better and better as we understand the consumer and the landscape. But I can see, if you look over a period of time, the gradual progression of growth and the gradual progression of the responses that we're getting. And I think it could be super important to take a step back and kind of make sure that whatever your starting point is, whatever you're measuring from, that what you're expecting from your content is actually realistic.
Well, I like that idea of realistic expectations. And Nicole used one of my favorite 50-cent words with us, which is persona. And your buyer persona. And Amulya, I know you must be thinking about personas, because that's actually a word that I originally know from software design. And so, so in my mind, a persona is this sort of idealized customer type. And you go through and you specify a number of features of them. Okay, so for instance, what technologies do they use? Are they comfortable with? You usually give them a little name. You don't want it to just be a vague thing. So you often specify gender, because sometimes there are some gender-specific things that come into play, concerns that you have. It can be based on all sorts of things, but you're kind of trying to think, you can generate tons of these, but typically when you're first starting out, you want to keep the number down small, 1, 2, 3 at most. So Amulya, why don't I give you a little bit of a chance to take the lead there on what a persona is and how you use it.
Love that, bud. So I have a bit of untraditional take on personas. My personal belief is when you're starting out, you don't necessarily 100% know your persona. What you do know is you have a thesis that, your idea or there's a problem statement and there's a certain group of people experiencing that problem. And then you basically build a solution and you see which groups of people that solution benefits the most. Okay, now you go ahead and you can say, let's go ahead and let's find the few of those sample customers and let's build a persona around each one of those customers. That's my short and simple answer. I wanted to get Sheena and Nicol a chance to talk about that. And then the last thing I just want to do is just point back to the previous question about content. The only thing I would add is, I think for younger companies, it's also very hard for younger companies often to get out there with blogs, and additional content. It's very difficult. Blogging is a very, very competitive industry. SEO is extremely competitive, and if you don't have a very, very strong strategy to attack it, it's very hard to get out there. That said, I'm in the building space too, and something that's very important, as much as blogging, is customer success stories, testimonials, right? Those can often drive as much traffic as a blog, and they also establish social proof and establish a better relationship with the existing customer. That said, these, and often those those testimonials can also drive some of your personas. So when you're building out a testimonial story, you can also build out a good example of your personas.
That's great. And Sheena, I happen to know that you are an author, and in fact write science fiction books. Just a little inside knowledge I get from working closely with Gabby. And, Nicol, you've been working a heavy content strategy. So, Sheena, talk to us then about this. We're still on the idea of content strategy, thinking about personas, matching to personas. Sheena, I'll start with you. How are you thinking about personas as you create content? How does that work?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And I think early on, when we were fleshing out those personas and fleshing out who might be our ideal target, especially on the B2C side of things, who would be very interested in this product and who would respond to our messaging and how should we tailor that messaging. All of that we did work through very, very early on. And as I'm thinking through the evolution of how our content has followed that, because that came first, and our content has evolved over the months and the years, I can absolutely see how we would put out content, see how people responded, and to Amulya's point as well, see if what we thought would be our personas actually were. Was there a connection there? Do we need to go back to the drawing board and tweak things? And also in our case as well, the people that we thought would respond very strongly and very positively, and we were prioritizing them, do we need to continue to prioritize them? Do we need to maybe push up some of the other ones and focus on those personas? Because when you're developing those, they're not all the same. You don't want to put your focus on every single one, like 10% on all 10 of them. You want to try to capitalize on the ones that maybe there's more abundance, or maybe it's lower hanging fruit, things like that. And so as I'm remembering, as our content has evolved, we've definitely kind of narrowed down a little bit and put the focus on the personas, if you will, that have responded to our messaging. And it just keeps getting better and better the more that you kind of hold it loosely and continue to allow that evolution to take place.
So I like that idea as persona as thesis. Okay, you're not wed to the persona. You come up with an initial idea and evolve it. Nicol, any further thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say for both Sheena and Amulya, excellent advice. I mean, you guys are nailing it in terms of methods and strategies and great advice for the listeners. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm kind of walking away with some ideas myself here. So I love the whole concept of the thesis. I think that's a great first approach. And the other thing, Sheena talked a little bit about this as well. One of the things that we did very early on with getting TechStak.com off the ground, we needed to understand where were we going to compete and where was it not going to be so difficult for us to do that. So we did some research on that. And in doing that allowed us to structure our blog content very, very specifically to attract the audience that we needed to attract and get an early traction to our blog and get traffic to our blog, and really being, again, it goes back to being intentional What were those, categories for our blog, those topics that we were going to write content on, and those we stay in those lanes, and we see, again, kind of goes back to what's working and what's not working, and you really focus in on that. So, taking a kind of a structured approach to developing your content, and I think, everybody's kind of alluded to this. It answers back to what is your persona looking for? What is your buyer looking for?
Well, that's great. And I want to, I think we've got a good handle from people who have been down the pike. You've all been down the pike a little bit. You started off with an initial persona idea, you developed content, you've been evolving your ideas, you've been getting feedback. So I'd like to point out to people that, sometimes people think of the web or digital as this almost broadcast-like process, but it's not really. It's interactive. Sometimes it may not be immediately interactive. You try things, see how they're working, and then you evolve. And I often tell folks that if you have a sales mentality, that really, you're thinking about qualifying people as they come in, and then figuring out where they fit. That if you have that mentality and you can figure out how to apply it in the digital context, you can wind up doing quite well. So that would be sort of my sum up of what we've said here. And we do have a follow-up question. I was kind of giving all of that. This was posted a bit earlier, but it's a great follow-up to this. So we have you guys who have been down the track a little bit, but I have Brandy Alexander here who says, I have a website on Wix. Okay, so Brandy is kind of in the education field. Okay, should I use their services for SEO, search engine optimization, getting my content found on Google so that people will just appear for me as leads? That's a sort of an inbound strategy, as Sheena was describing earlier, and help with lead gen until I take a class or two at EMU. We're not, by the way, trying to force people to take classes at EMU. And then she goes on a little bit into detail about EMU. But I think this idea is, we're dealing sometimes with folks who are solopreneurs, small organizations. I know you guys often probably think of yourselves as small, but these guys are probably smaller still, okay? And so they're just trying to get started out, and they're saying, this is overwhelming to me. Are there some tools I can use? So Brandy's saying, I'm looking at the Wix tools. What about those? Are there some other tools people can use off the shelf that can help them with lead gen? And I'm sure you guys have some great answers. I did hear something about email from Nicol, which I suspect is part of this. And so, Nicol, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so for, I guess, input on the Wix website, if you can go that route and it makes sense and it's economical, for you, affordable, I think that can definitely be a solution. From the SEO perspective, SEO is a long game. It's not a get it up there, get some keywords out there, and you're going to start seeing tons of traffic to the website. It's a long game, and you have to really, again, go back to what is your audience looking for, keywords, long tail, what's the content there that's going to help you with the SEO. Whether it's your blog, it's the technical SEO, as well. So there's that whole side of it, and then the SEO for just having the right words on your page, and your page is optimized. So there's a lot that goes into that. For email marketing, it's challenging to start your email list. Again, you've got to have content to be able to do that. Do you have on your website, sign up for my email, or for, weekly emails, but what are they going to get emailed to them? Is it going to be something of interest? So what's your hook? Is it going to be marketing tips? Is it going to be, I think you said this website was training and education.
Yeah.
What are you going to give the person? It goes back to value, right? So I think we talked about that a little bit earlier. What value are you going to give somebody to get them to give you their email list? It has to be high value. It has to be sticky, something I want. So growing that email list, and then now that you have them in your email, what are you going to give them, right? So are you going to email them weekly? Are you going to be doing a newsletter? A lot of people are moving away from newsletters. I'd love to hear that from the rest of the panel. Are they doing, what are they doing with their email marketing? So those are some of the things to think about when you're doing email. You're going to have some offers.
So let me ask you a quick question, Nicole. So we're mentioning email marketing, and so typically people use a platform. They use something like MailChimp or Constant Contact or another email. So is there, which of those have you tried, and is there one that's better than the others?
Great question regarding tools. Yeah, so I did used to use MailChimp, and I did move away from that. And the reason I moved away from that was because I use a client relationship management tool, or CRM, that I can do all of those email marketing things in terms of building emails, building sequences, building newsletters, tracking links. I think when you start talking about tools, there's a lot out there, and you can start small. You can start with things that are free, and then you can decide, what do you move to and what kind of investment do you need to make.
Okay, great. And so, Sheena, I know you guys are using all sorts of sophisticated tools. I know you're using email. Can you talk to us about some of the tools you're using and what's worked and what hasn't?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to circle back to one part of the question that was submitted is in regards to content and how do you improve your SEO optimization. And there are indeed some free tools out there if the person who asked the question isn't quite sure that they want to invest financially at this time. They can utilize to get themselves started with understanding what keywords are in their industry and in their vertical. Google Trends is a way to start, to go on googletrends.com, see what words you would use in the education field. I believe you said this individual was from.
Yep.
Put in some keywords and see if those keywords are still trending. Google will tell you where you are. You can search by your region, you can search by nationwide, and you can see how popular those words are. That's just very baseline. It doesn't give you a whole lot in terms of how saturated those keywords are on the web already, but it'll let you know what people are looking for. Another free tool that can be used is called answerthepublic.com. That'll go a little bit more in depth, and it will actually allow you to map out going from keywords to long tail search phrases and being able to see a little bit more in depth what the consumer is searching for on Google, as well as how saturated those keywords may be already. So for someone who's just starting out, which it sounds like this person may be, that could be a good way to kind of ease into it and to see if you can do enough for now. To Nicole's point, it is a long game. It's an ongoing process, but this might actually get this person started and get them going. To answer your more recent question in terms of email marketing, we, like Nicole, we did start out with MailChimp. And then as we have evolved and migrated, we actually are using a service in Shopify. That's our website hosting is Shopify. And one of the things I love about Shopify is it does have those great features that Nicole was mentioning in terms of being able to more in-depth track who's opening, when, where are they, all of these things, because it's coming from Shopify. So we're able to attach people who are using our website with how they're interacting with our emails as well. It gives us that insight as well. But I think another element too to this whole topic is to not forget to utilize another free tool, which is Google Analytics. So if you are looking for ways to actually see how I think this person was on Wix, their Wix website is doing, and maybe they don't know how to go into Wix and see these stats, themselves. They can actually utilize Google Analytics. Very simple. You can attach it to your website and you can get a lot of great data there, and that will help you understand which pages might actually be performing pretty well and you have no idea, and then which other pages users are bouncing off of, or maybe they're not utilizing the page very well. They're not spending time on there. So there are a lot of free tools that can get this person started for sure.
And I'll point out that Gabby has listed in the comments for those watching this later that Gabby, who works for Sheena, is, in addition to Answer the Public, you use Ubersuggest and keywordtool.io. So there's a couple of other free tools thrown out in there. And I'll throw in too, just real quick, because frankly, the Center for Digital Engagement is nothing but a lead gen and marketing organization. We're bringing in students, we're bringing in companies for the students to work with. We're bringing in the public at large to sort of work on that organic word of mouth. And so what we do is we do events. So we do in-person events when we can. We're doing the virtual events, which you're seeing right now. We get people to join our Facebook group. That's actually one of the areas where we've had the most success. But we also get them to sign on to our mailing list. So when they go and register in advance, that gets them entered into our mailing list. And then, of course, if they decide they're no longer interested, they can opt out. And so that's a little bit our strategy. And, we kind of look for responses from the public as we're interacting with them. And we do use Google Analytics, particularly when we're recruiting students. So which of these outreach efforts that we're taking seems to really be paying off. And you can see, oh my God, look, U of M, we get a lot of students we recruit from U of M. Oh my God, look, 400 people just applied from U of M. That's a slight exaggeration, but we did have like 100 apply in a couple of days this last go around. So you can see things like that. And then, even if you don't have a super sophisticated measurement system, you can say, okay, I sent out this message through this set of people, and suddenly I got another 100 applications. So that one worked. Okay, I found the right way to go. So Amulya, let's come back to you real quick, and tools we can use.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very passionate about cold emails. So here's my first thought process on cold emails. But before I go to cold emails, you talked about a website, basically, and basic SEO, right? So let's address that. When it comes to starting a website, I would not recommend you just, you don't necessarily have to pay for extra SEO services to get advantage of good SEO. So, right. So what is SEO fundamentally? It's using basically something called domain authority, which means a website people trust, to link to your website, to basically get more traffic to your website. There's a few hacks around this. So if you're starting your own website and your own blog, I would not recommend you go ahead and just try to create like a /blog link. What I would probably recommend if you're just getting started is to go and publish, get contributor access to, sites like, Thrive Global, because Thrive Global is, very much along your access. I'm a contributor there. If you need help, you can reach out. I also recommend you get, publish articles on Medium, because Medium, you already have taken advantage of this incredible domain authority as SEO. So when you publish an article, and if it's given the right keywords, higher chance when someone looks up that article, that will pop up. Much less likely if you're just publishing on your /blog link that article will pop up. These are just a few of the tips off the top of my head. Also, when using Wix websites are fine. I've seen lots of people scale Wix websites. The thing is, when people go to your Wix website, make sure that there's a simple call to action, right? So make sure that there's either book a consultation, book a call. Often it's, I don't know what your time constraints might be, but you probably will agree to manage all these email campaigns. It's not necessarily just a one-person task. Maybe it's, it's a few go-arounds, maybe talking to a few other people. So what I would recommend is, if you don't think you have the time to build really awesome newsletters, don't. It's going to be a waste of time initially. What I would recommend is maybe try to scale up one-on-one personalized conversation. So giving them free 15-minute consultation, 30-minute consultation, etc. Okay, now let's talk about email. So when it comes to email, there's few things I would recommend right off the top of my head. So the first is, if you don't have this already, you should use a tool called Mixmax or Gmas. So these are both mail merge type tools, and that's a fancy word of saying you can create basically a spreadsheet of a list of names, emails, and additional information on a specific lead. So let's say you would have their location, you would have, what their favorite, maybe what their favorite food is, etc. And then you would basically write a customized email, or where they're from, right? More typically like city, state. And you write a customized email with these variables that will almost feel like them. It's like there's no, and also, it would be like write a customized email almost as if, there's no way this could have been automated. You want to create that feeling, right? And the way, one tip I would do to make sure that that's the case, yes, you can use those basic templates. What I recommend is adding an additional variable called PS. And in this PS, basically write a custom one-line message where there's, it's something to relate with the potential lead, that there's no chance it's not just a filled-in variable, it's truly a line. So you usually put that in the first item in the line, or you put that, near the end. So PS and then that variable. And now you're going to have this amazing email that people are much, much more likely to respond to. So personalization is the key to make cold emails work. Step number 2. So Mixmax, Gmas. Gmas is free. Mixmax is free. Mixmax, you can get advantage of free email tracking. So you can let's just see when someone opens your email, if it's a buyer or someone's interested, they're opening the email multiple times. That's a good chance for you to say, okay, let me just ping back in. Hey, I'm checking in. Now, basically, that's a unique, opportune moment you can take advantage of. Okay, now you guys following so far? Good. Hopefully you are. Now, what I would also recommend you do is, what other ways can you take personalization to the next level? There's a tool called Lemlist. Lemlist offers Lemlist, Lemlist, or Hyperrise. Both of these tools allow you to send really awesome personalized images in emails. So you could basically have, if there's another website you want to feature, or let's say you're sending email to University of Michigan, you can basically create images.
So Amulya, we're starting to run over, and I have one last super quick question. But what I like here is you brought up at the very beginning, invest in interactive conversations with your customer so that you can get to understand them. That's what Sheena and Nicol were doing when they were going to trade shows. It's what we do when we hold events. And then start to try to have customized interactions with folks that show, okay, I recognize that we met. This is not just a cold email. So I like that aspect of it. And I want to close off with this question from longtime friend of the Center for Digital Engagement, Is Sas, and she's asking, and this is just a quick answer, and then we'll go out of here. Do these business owners do their own digital marketing or hire it out? And so, 30 seconds to each of you, and we'll start with Amulya.
Yes, so we do most of it in-house. Maybe one day we'll have third parties. But what I would recommend is, it's hard to do everything by yourself, so take advantage of tools while you can. And also, I'm writing a book called Art of Cold Email, so you can go ahead and check out artofcoldemail.com for more.
That's where all these suggestions came from. We had a wealth of suggestions here. How about you, Sheena?
Yes, we do ours in-house as well. And I would agree with what Amulya is saying. It would be nice at some point to expand beyond, but for starting out, for sure, doing it in-house is just fine.
And Nicol?
We also do ours in-house and have amazing folks on our team. Where we don't have the skill set, we bring in partners to help us out and teach us. And then we're able to, add that skill set to what we can do. And I have to agree 100% with tools. I love the SaaS products, the tools. It's almost like an addiction on trying them out. So it can get a little scary with all the bells and whistles and getting distracted with things that you probably don't need as well.
So what I like in your answer, Nicole, is what you're essentially, and I think all of you are saying this, is I want to own the customer relationship. I want to own my knowledge of the customer. But if there are specific things I need some help with, then I can hire people in. Okay, now you might hire in an intern, you might hire in a consultant, but they don't own the customer relationship. The company owns the customer relationship. And I think sometimes companies can fool themselves a little bit into thinking, well, I'll just get somebody to get customers for me and I'll focus on, my craft, whatever that is. And no, that I just think that doesn't work. So I'll just issue that judgment. So Liz, by the way, has thanked us, and that leads to me thanking the four of you. This has been a great session. You come from very different perspectives, and yet, you're dealing with the same problem and have brought up some great strategies, I think, to help our audience. So thank you. So we're going to go out.
Thank you,
Sure.
Marisa.
Yep. And so we're going to go out now into outro.